What did anonymous SEC coaches have to say about the Oklahoma Sooners?
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button over there, that like button, hit that notification bell also to let you know when new episodes drop. Athlon Sports, every year, part of their magazine, also release it on the digital sign. They get together with coaches from across the country to speak on, anonymously, other coaches within their conference. Now, with the Oklahoma Sooners going into the SEC, we get to hear what some of these coaches have to say about Oklahoma, about Brent Venables, and where they're headed. So we're going to discuss all of that, what they had to say about the Oklahoma Sooners and Brent Venables. We're also going to dig into the Athletics article on Dillon Gabriel later in the show, highlighting a little bit more about why he chose to stay in college and leave the Oklahoma Sooners for the Oregon Ducks. We'll do that later in the show. But first, let's talk about the SEC coaches speaking anonymously about Oklahoma. Here's what one had to say. They're starting to round out on defense to a unit you'd expect Brent Venables to be coaching at Clemson. That's the good news entering the SEC. The bad news is that they could be bad on the O-line if they can't pull some guys together late in the portal. Let's start with that last note right there. If they can't pull some guys late in the portal, I feel like they've done everything they need to do in the portal along the offensive line. Now it's just about figuring it out and making it mesh. You've added Gary and Hatchett. You've added Fabechi Wiwu. You've added Branson Hickman. You've added Spencer Brown, Michael Tarkin. I mean, you basically added a whole offensive line through the transfer portal. Now it's about figuring out which guys are going to emerge and take starting jobs. You still have a lot of blue chip talent along this offensive line that you're developing. Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor, Heath Ozida was a 4-star on certain recruiting services. Josh Bates similarly was also a 4-star. You've got the true freshmen that are coming in as well. Eugene Brooks, Eddie Pierre-Louis, Josh Isosa, Daniel Akinkami. Like, there's a lot of talent at offensive line right now. You just don't know how it's all going to come together. During spring ball, there were a number of guys that had impressive practices, impressive springs. By the time we got to the spring game, the starting offensive line was Michael Tarkin at left tackle, Jacob Sexton at left guard. We don't know if that's going to be where it ultimately sticks because we've heard really, really great things about Jacob Sexton playing left tackle. Many believe that he could be Oklahoma's next offensive tackle taken in the first round of the NFL draft down the road. So you had Tarkin, Sexton, and then at center was Joshua Bates. Obviously, you bring in Branson Hickman, who's got 2,400 snaps to his name from his time at SMU, again, in a good SMU offense. Then you're looking at right guard Fabechi Wiwu, who might have been the star of camp along the offensive line. I think everybody came away impressed when they got a chance to see him up close and personal. Looked good in the spring game. And then at right tackle, it's Jake Taylor. With Sexton and Taylor, it's about experience and getting them reps, getting them game time, and they're going to continue to develop. That's going to be huge for them, those first 3 games of the regular season, getting those guys gelled, meshed, helping everybody come together. But you've got enough talent, you've got enough experience that you can go into this season feeling comfortable with what you've got to work with. Now, will it come together and be a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line? That remains to be seen. But I think what we're going to get is an offensive line that's good enough for Oklahoma to put up points and be competitive in the SEC. Now, let's get to the first part of that quote on Brent Venables' defense. Here it is again. They're starting to round out on defense to a unit you'd expect Brent Venables to be coaching at Clemson. Dude, that's great news for Oklahoma. That's great news even for the offense, because now you're getting closer to complementary football. You're getting closer to a balanced attack that you got to have to be able to win it and win at a very, very high level. Georgia's defense has been great, the best in the nation. The offense has been really, really, really good too. Michigan last year, the defense was great. The offense was really, really, really good too. Oklahoma's offense has been great at times over the last 2 decades. Over the last 6-7 years, it was great, really good, and sometimes just good. And in the years where they lost 2 Big 12 games, 2020, 2021, and then we had the 2022, debacle, you had offense that wasn't good enough to carry a bad defense. And that's kind of where we've kind of come to a head, right? Is that now we're at a point where the defense is getting to the point where they can carry the load themselves. They can go win a football game for you. You're not relying on your offense to go score 40, 45, 50 points a game for you to win a football game. No, you've got a defense that's going to be able to hold teams to 24 or less on a regular basis. In year 1, under Brent Venables, they allowed 30 points per game. Not good enough. Absolutely not good enough. He knows that. We know that. Not breaking any news here. Year 2, they improved that number by nearly a touchdown a game. That's a significant difference. To go from 99th in total defense, in scoring defense, to top 50 in scoring defense. That's a big, big jump. And a touchdown a game may not sound like a big difference, but it was a good enough difference to get them from 6 wins to 10 wins in year 2 of Brent Venables. So if they can continue to develop in that kind of same pace, I think we're heading towards a defense that if they can hold teams under 20 points per game on a regular basis, or an average of under 20 points per game, that's going to put them in a position to win double-digit games even this year. If they can get that number closer to 16, 15, now you're cooking. Now you're cooking with a defense that can go help you win a national championship. And a lot of this is coming from a unit that has retention. We talked about it in one of the shows last week, retaining guys like Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, Ethan Downs, Woody Washington, Dejon Terry. Absolutely huge for you. Did you lose guys to the portal? Yeah, you did on defense. You lost Justin Harrington, a Shane Witter. You lost Josiah Wagner. These are guys that, may not have been starters for you, but would have been role players and would have been rotational pieces on your defense. Huge losses. It's hard to argue that they're huge losses, but you don't like watching talent walk out the door. And those guys were talented players that filled a role for you on the depth chart. Now there's a depth chart squeeze as your depth improves and your talent base improves. And that's kind of where Oklahoma's at this point, is that the talent has gotten to a point where some guys are kind of getting squeezed out a little bit. And that's just the reality of the roster crunch. That doesn't mean that those guys are bad players. Josiah Wagner, I love that dude's game. Justin Harrington, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a productive player. And so, the defense is coming and it's getting noticed by SEC coaches. And that is a great, great sign for Oklahoma. We got a couple more quotes we're going to dig into here on the other side of the break. We're also going to talk about what Dillon Gabriel had to say regarding his transfer from Oklahoma to Oregon, why he decided to stick around at the collegiate level based on an article and interview he and his family did with The Athletic. We'll do that next, coming up here on Locked On Sooners. Locked On Sooners is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to go to the place that has the quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. If you've ever been a part of hiring, you know that sometimes what you're looking at on a resume and the person that's sitting in front of you may not be everything you need to know about that candidate. But LinkedIn's got the questionnaires that can help identify the candidates that are going to be right for your role. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process even easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's dig into the next line of thinking, the next thought. A lot of this is going to be along the offensive line. And we know that that's where the focus has been, right? All offseason, we've talked offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. Let's dig into this. Oklahoma is a legit top program. Well, thank you. I'm glad that the SEC anonymous coach understands that Oklahoma is a blue blood. They're one of the elite. They're one of the best programs in the history of college football, and that's not slowing down anytime soon. All right, Oklahoma is a legit top program, but the secret to the SEC is the line play, and they won't be able to do what they want on offense if they can't protect against the average DL in the league. Hey, we talked about that in the first segment. The offensive line, I'm confident in that. And the biggest reason I'm confident in that I didn't touch on in the first segment, and that's Bill Bedenbaugh. We've seen Bill Bedenbaugh create offensive lines when we've had questions, right? It seems like every offseason for several years, there have been big question marks along the offensive line, and they figured it out. They found a way to make it all work and make it all come together. Why is this year going to be any different? I have little doubt that this year is going to be any different for Bill Bedenbaugh and the offensive line group. They've got the talent, they've got the coaching. It's going to come together. I want to kind of get to the other side of that portion, though, and the trench play on the defensive side of the ball, I think is going to be another aspect of this that, okay, we're not quite used to seeing the big, beefy SEC physical offensive lines that, we've not seen those before. In the Big 12, okay, maybe Texas this past year had one of those, and Oklahoma stood tall. 4 chances from the one, couldn't get in. I think that's a good sign right there that Oklahoma along the defensive front is getting closer and is getting to the point where, hey, they're not going to be pushed around up front anymore. That group with Ethan Downs and Dejon Terry and Isaiah Coe and Jordan Kelly. Now Coe and Kelly, they're gone, but you bring back Downs, Dejon Terry, Grayson Halton. You bring back, Dasan McCullough, who played a lot of cheetah that was huge on that goal line stand. Bring back R. Mason Thomas, Adepoju Adebawore, Trace Ford has been a big, piece, or was a big piece last year as a rotational edge rusher. You add Dominic Williams, you add Caden Woolard, you add weight to Grayson Halton, who's now north of 300 pounds. You add David Stone and Jaden Jackson, who are up over 300 pounds. Ashton Sanders, Marcus Strong continue to develop as well. So this defensive front is in a much better position to be able to hold up to the rigors of playing SEC offensive lines week after week after week after week. And the depth is better. The depth is in a much better place. I mean, you just look at the nose tackle position alone, and they're ready to roll 3 deep right now with Dominic Williams, Dejon Terry, and Jaden Jackson. That's huge. That's a big, big difference from what this team looked like just a few years back. Even before Dejon Terry got here, last offseason, you didn't really have a suitable nose tackle. You had guys that were playing nose tackle, Neville Gallimore, Jalen Redmond, Perrion Winfrey, but they were undersized nose tackles playing closer to 285, 290. Now you've got legit 300 to 310 to 320, 330 pounders that are going to be able to line up across from the center and legitimately take up space and take up double teams and make things so much easier for your linebackers to run and hit. It's why guys like Danny Stutzman and Kip Lewis were able to dart into the backfield on a regular basis, especially on that 4th and goal. It's why run plays got bumped outside and Ethan Downs and Deshaun McCullough were making plays on the edge, because you have legit guys at defensive tackle that can hold up at the point of attack and aren't getting blown off the ball and aren't getting overwhelmed with size. And you've got depth at the position. It's not just one guy that's going to be leading the charge. And you've added and upgraded your talent at the position too. It's not like you just have guys. Dejon Terry was good. I mean, he was a big reason why the defense improved last year, especially in short yardage on third downs. That was a big reason why Oklahoma improved. And then you upgraded on top of that with a Dominic Williams addition in the transfer portal. Someone who Brent Venables just raved about last week at the SEC meetings in Destin. You added Jaden Jackson, who again, was one of my favorite players in the whole 2024 recruiting cycle, even before he committed to Oklahoma, because that's a dude that has 3-down potential at defensive tackle, because he can rush the passer as well as play the run as well as anybody. And he's just a true freshman, so I'm not going to heap these huge expectations on him to be Ndamukong Suh, week 1 with the Oklahoma Sooners. But in a rotational role as a true freshman, again, that's a dynamic trio at nose tackle. And then you go over to that 3 technique defensive tackle, and it's looking more and more dynamic all the time. And then your edge group is deep. Ethan Downs, Caden Woolard, 2 very experienced guys with pass rush productivity. You add guys like Adepoju Adebawore and R. Mason Thomas and Trace Ford to the mix, and you've got a trio right there that brings a lot of juice. And I think Ethan Downs is going to show even more in the pass rush productivity department, than he has to this point in his career. And he's been good, but I think he takes another step towards being a great player this year. I think the trench play is going to surprise a lot of people. In particular, it's going to surprise a lot of SEC teams. Let's dig into the last comment here from the anonymous SEC coaches via Athlon Sports. If you're looking for a new offense, it won't be drastically different from former offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby, but they've got to run the ball more effectively than they did when he was there. Seth Littrell is a made-to-order kind of OC, a really experienced guy who is going to be is going to scheme to fit his personnel. I'm excited about the Seth Littrell hire. Anytime that you add a fullback, H-back into the mix as an offensive play caller, I think it's going to help create a little bit different identity for you. One that's maybe a little bit more physical at the point of attack, one that's going to get downhill a little bit more. I think some of the misconception about Oklahoma's offensive or rushing ability was due to the usage and the deployment of the running back group. Also, just trying to figure out offensive line, right? You didn't have your offensive line settled for the first half of last season, and it showed, but also your running back room wasn't really settled for the first half of last season either. And it showed. I think going into this year, even though you've got complete turnover on offensive line, the fact that you've got stability at running back and health at running back is going to help the offensive line as well, because you're going to have a running back room that isn't trying to get up to speed in season. They're ready to go week 1. And they're ready to make a big impact week 1. And I mean, based on what you've got up front along the offensive line and the guys you've brought in, you should have a pretty clear picture of what your offensive line is going to look like starting week 1. Now, there might be a little bit of variation between, Jacob Sexton at left tackle, Heath Ozida or Garion Hatchett at left guard, Branson Hickman at center, Fabechi Wiwu, and then Jake Taylor at right tackle. So there might be some variations along the left side, but I think we got a pretty clear picture of what the offensive line is going to look like. I think the running game is going to be really good. We saw that he's an aggressive play caller. I think they're going to use a lot of RPO stuff just to kind of simplify some things and get the easy button going for Jackson Arnold at times, or at least that's what it looked like in the bowl game. But again, hard to know what the bowl game offense is going to be or what the offense is going to look like based on the bowl game, because they were just trying to get install done, get on the same page. But I do think we see a lot of RPO stuff, but we're going to see, deep shots, Seth Luttrell, Jackson Arnold, they're going to show off that arm. And they're going to use guys like Nick Anderson and Deion Burks and Jaden Gibson, Angelo Anthony, Brennan Thompson, Jaquez Petaway, Jaleel Farouk to get the ball downfield and stress and threaten defenses. And I think we're going to see a much more effective and efficient deep passing game than what we've seen in the past under Dillon Gabriel. It was good under Levy and Gabriel. Don't get me wrong. It was really, really good, but it was also at times inefficient. Whether it was the timing of the downfield patterns or a little bit of inaccuracy, I think that's where kind of some of that inefficiency came home to roost. Speaking of Dillon Gabriel, he had an interview with The Athletic, him and his family. And it's a great article. Highly recommend everybody go check that out. But we're going to dig into some of the reasons why he left Oklahoma for Oregon coming up here on Locked On Sooners. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Again, that Oklahoma over-under win total sitting at 7.5. That's looking really, really juicy. If you want to get in on the action, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com, America's number one sports book. Dillon Gabriel looked like he was going to be heading to the NFL after the 2023 season. Had a huge year for the Oklahoma Sooners with over 40 total touchdowns, big passing yards, had big games, throughout the season, was a big reason why Oklahoma won 10 games. Surprised a lot of people. I remember when that transfer portal announcement came down and he decided he was going to enter the transfer portal. Looking at options, I think everybody kind of looked at it like, okay, he's just going to explore some options, see what's out there, and still maybe go to the NFL. Well, turned out he was going to go to Oregon instead. Looked like he ended up finding an opportunity to reunite with a coach that had recruited him a little bit when he was coming out of high school, and Dan Lanning, when Lanning was still at Oregon. But this was a very, very intriguing move, and I love the move for Dillon Gabriel. It's a fantastic landing spot for him in an offense that can put up big, big numbers on a team that's going to have a good defense, and they're going to be a contender this year. I really think Oregon is going to be one of the teams to beat in the Big Ten. As much as everybody wants to kind of gas up Ohio State, and you're looking at Michigan as well, Penn State is going to be a problem. Oregon is the team, especially of the relocating teams, whether it's Big 12 to SEC or Pac to Big 10 or Pac to Big 12. I really think Oregon is the team that might make the most noise in year one, aside from the Oklahoma Sooners. Of course, Oklahoma Sooners is going to make a ton of noise in the SEC in 2024. But Dillon Gabriel sat down or had an interview with The Athletic and Christopher Kamrani. It was a fantastic article. I highly recommend you read it over there at theathletic.com. You can just search Dillon Gabriel, The Athletic, and it'll pop up for you. And it just really goes through everything that went down and how things transpired and what led to Dillon ending up at Oregon. And I thought several of these things were really noteworthy. That he received a 7th round grade or an undrafted free agent grade coming out after the 2023 season, had he gone into the NFL draft. That surprises me, but not really. So a very, very productive passer, but not big. And if you're not big, you better be very, very toolsy, or you better have some elite traits somewhere, right? If you're, Kyler Murray, you're 5'9", but you're quick twitch, you have a huge arm, and you're accurate as all get out, and you're fast, like fast, then teams are going to be more willing to overlook some of the size issues. And the other part of, Kyler Murray's game that makes him really, really intriguing, and that you're willing to bet on his size holding up, is that he knows how to get down. He knows how to not take a lot of big hits. He showed that at Oklahoma, just really, really can get into that baseball slide really, really quick, can avoid big punishing tackles. Dillon Gabriel took a lot of big hits during his time in college. The other aspect of that, is just sometimes like, okay, Gabriel was really, really good. And then there were times where, we saw it, the Kansas game where the coach just kind of took the ball out of his hands. We saw other times, the West Virginia game from 2022 where he wasn't super consistent. And I think that might have scared some teams off to evaluate him as a 4th, 5th, or 6th round potential quarterback. But somebody will get a steal with Gabriel at some point down the road, whether they take him as a draft selection or they get him as an undrafted free agent. He's going to be one of those guys that can have a long, lengthy career as a backup. But why did he decide to leave Oklahoma? I think a lot of people were expecting either he comes back to Oklahoma or he goes to the NFL. He entered the transfer portal, kind of came as a bit of a surprise. And I say a lot of people expected that. I think there was also a big chunk of the fan base that expected it just to be Jackson Arnold's team for good reason, because at OU Media Day in August, most everybody talked about, hey, Dillon Gabriel is going to be done after this year. It's Jackson Arnold's team after that. I think that was the talk around campus. That was the talk from the coaches. There was no real expectation that Dillon Gabriel would stick around for one more year, that he'd be off to the NFL, whether it was Venables or Jeff Lebby. It was all kind of pretty clear that it was going to be Jackson Arnold's team in 2024. And in this article from The Athletic, Gabriel's mom, Dory, kind of speaks to that part of what Dillon Gabriel left, or part of the reason why Dillon Gabriel left, was because of Jackson Arnold, and not because Gabriel was unwilling to compete with Arnold for snaps or for a starting quarterback role. But there was this thought, and Gabriel's mom expresses this in the article. She says, he just knew if he stayed, Jackson might leave, and he didn't want that for the program. If you feel like returning is going to cause more harm to the program than good, then you do what you have to do. His dad also talks about the idea that it's a business, and there could have been some discussion between Venables and Gabriel that laid out the reality that's like, hey, you can come back and compete for a starting job, but there's no guarantees here. Or it could have been pretty well laid out that, hey, if you stick around, Jackson might leave. Who knows what the discussion was? None of us really know what the discussion between Venables and Gabriel was like, or Venables and Arnold. What we know is that, hey, Gabriel decided to explore an opportunity elsewhere. And if he decided to go to Oregon to make sure that Jackson Arnold wouldn't leave Oklahoma, then, I mean, shout out Dillon Gabriel. Like, that's that servant heart mentality and putting the program first. I mean, he was only at Oklahoma for a couple of years, but very much endeared him to Oklahoma Sooner fans during his time. He was a leader. He came at a critical point in Oklahoma football history. Lincoln Riley leaving, Caleb Williams following, Oklahoma kind of dead in the water without a quarterback. Spencer Rattler left also. You didn't have a quarterback. Gabriel was slated to go to UCLA and decided to tell Chip Kelly, I'm sorry, I'm going to go follow Jeff Lebby to Oklahoma. That's a tough call, and that's a tough conversation to have. And Dillon Gabriel had that conversation and came to Oklahoma and put together 2 really, really good years. Not Heisman Trophy winning years, but really good years. And, he's not going to be remembered in that upper echelons with the Sam Bradfords and Kyler and Baker and Landry Jones and Josh Heupel and Jason Whites. He's not going to be remembered in that echelon of quarterback. Jalen Hurts. But I think he's kind of in that next tier, right, of quarterbacks in the modern era of Oklahoma football. Now, there's a whole lot from the Wilkinson, Switzer, days that they're different types of quarterbacks. They're not the big, passing number quarterbacks. But this right here for Gabriel is just one of those things that can help etch your name in Oklahoma Sooner lore for a long time. If his mom is to be believed, and I mean, I'm not going to sit here and call anybody's mom a liar. I'm going to take her at her word that Gabriel was concerned about the future of Oklahoma football. And not in the sense that they're going to struggle to find quarterbacks if I leave, but you've got Jackson Arnold, a 5-star quarterback, Elite 11 winner. It would be not great if he left. It would not be great for the Oklahoma Sooners if he left. Maybe I need to go find another place to play. And I mean, he did. He found another great opportunity and a great situation for him to apply his craft and maybe increase his draft stock a little bit more. And if not, get an NIL payday that could help set him up for the next, who knows how many years. And so, shout out to Dillon Gabriel. I know there were a lot of people who didn't really have any hard feelings toward Gabriel when he left. I'd say the majority were encouraging towards him and thankful for the time that he gave Oklahoma. And this is just another moment to be thankful for, that he decided and that this was an important thing for him to do to help Oklahoma football secure its future, especially going into the SEC. So thanks, Dillon Gabriel, for that. Again, go read that article over at The Athletic. Fantastic piece of work. Great insight from Gabriel and from his parents, just about how everything transpired last December, January or so. Dan Lanning talking about Gabriel and what he brings to the Oregon Ducks. It's going to be a really fun team to watch this year. I know we're not super fond of Oregon for reasons, but I'm going to be tuning into some Oregon games just because, one, I like the uniforms. I'm a big fan of the uniforms, but two, just to see what Dillon Gabriel is able to do in their first run through the Big Ten. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Also go check out that Locked On 24/7 Sports streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. You can also read my work covering the Oklahoma Sooners over at thesoonerswire.com. But until next time, I'm John Williams, Boomer Sooner.